Montana Territory, 1875. Snow fell silently outside the Pine Creek schoolhouse as Gabriella Pierce cleared the children's arithmetic exercises from her desk. At 23, she'd made a life for herself that defied the expectations of everyone in the frontier mining town. Tall and willowy, with chestnut hair typically pinned in a practical bun, she adjusted her simple blue calico dress and gazed through the frosted window. "Another day of filling young minds while my own gathers dust," she murmured to the empty classroom. Gabriella had come west after her father's passing, armed with a teaching certificate and determination to prove that education had value even in the rugged mountains. The town had welcomed her expertise, but she'd quickly discovered that most men viewed her intellect as an oddity rather than an asset. They praised her dedication to the children while simultaneously suggesting she'd be better suited to tending a husband's home than exploring philosophical ideas. "A woman can birth babies or birth ideas, but rarely both in this world," she often thought. It was her core belief, reinforced by every interaction with the miners, ranchers, and merchants who seemed threatened by her well-worn copy of Emerson's essays. Gabriella believed the frontier demanded pragmatism above all. Romance was a luxury for softer places, not for a territory where survival consumed most waking hours. She'd convinced herself that intellectual fulfillment would compensate for companionship, that her books and students would fill whatever spaces might otherwise feel empty. As she extinguished the lamps, the door flew open with a burst of cold air. Sheriff Miller stamped snow from his boots, looking apologetic. "Miss Pierce, there's been trouble at the Pearson place. Their boys caught his leg in some machinery, and they're asking for you." Gabriella grabbed her medical kit, a collection of bandages, ointments, and basic surgical tools she'd acquired during the 3 years since arriving. Though not formally trained, she'd become the town's de facto medic for incidents that didn't warrant the doctor's journey from Helena. "Is it Thomas? How serious?" she asked, pulling on her heavy wool coat. "Bad enough they sent for you in this weather. Young Samuel Yates is there already," rode out when he heard the boy screaming. Gabriella's heart quickened at the mention of Sam. The young cowhand had arrived in Pine Creek the previous spring, taking work at the expansive Diamond Ranch. Unlike most men who avoided her gaze when she spoke of literature or science, Samuel actually asked questions, seeming genuinely interested in her thoughts. The sheriff helped her onto his horse, and they rode through the deepening snow toward the outlying homestead. Hours later, Gabriella watched 10-year-old Thomas Pearson finally drift into a laudanum-induced sleep. The machinery had nearly severed his leg, but with Sam's quick thinking to fashion a tourniquet and her steady hands cleaning and stitching the wound, the boy might keep the limb. "You've got remarkable skill, Miss Pierce," Samuel said quietly as they stepped outside the bedroom. At 26, he stood lean and tall, his face handsome with kind eyes and a day's stubble shadowing his jaw. "Most educated ladies I've known would have fainted at the sight of such an injury." "Most educated ladies haven't had to attend to mine cave-ins and logging accidents," she replied, washing blood from her hands in the basin. "And please call me Gabriella when we're not among the children." He smiled, revealing the dimple in his left cheek. "Only if you'll call me Sam." Something in his respectful tone, the way he didn't sound surprised by her competence, made her momentarily forget her convictions about frontier relationships. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 2 more riders, Clayton Walsh, heir to the region's largest cattle operation, and Bartley Jenkins, the charismatic gambling hall owner. Both men had made their interest in Gabriella evident over recent months, though in markedly different ways. "Teacher's playing doctor again," Bartley announced, his voice carrying its usual mocking edge. He tipped his expensive hat. "Impressive, though a woman with your looks shouldn't need to bloody her hands." Clayton dismounted gracefully, his expensive clothes marking him as someone who supervised rather than performed ranch work. "Miss Pierce, my foreman told me what happened. I've brought some supplies from town." Unlike Bartley, Clayton's interest manifested in grand gestures and public declarations of admiration, treating her like a delicate object to be won rather than a person with thoughts of her own. As the 3 men helped the Pearsons prepare for the night, Gabriella observed their interactions. Clayton commanded, Bartley joked, but Sam quietly anticipated needs before they were spoken. When discussion turned to a recent territorial dispute, both Clayton and Bartley dismissed Gabriella's questions, while Sam engaged her perspective as valuable. That night, huddled near the Pearsons' fire, something shifted in Gabriella's perception of her future. Perhaps the frontier didn't demand she choose between her mind and her heart. The thought was as frightening as it was exhilarating. Spring thaw transformed Pine Creek into a muddy, bustling hub of activity. Wagon trains passed through, bringing supplies and new settlers. The schoolhouse doubled as a meeting hall where territorial matters were debated, and Gabriella found herself increasingly at the center of community decisions, a position uncommon for a woman, but one earned through her proven judgment during the harsh winter. His words were flattering, but Gabriella noticed he enjoyed baiting her into debates only to dismiss her points with patronizing smiles. Only Samuel seemed genuinely interested in her opinions rather than simply tolerating them. When the town council debated whether to fund additional school resources or improve the jail, Sam publicly supported her passionate speech about education's importance. Later, Clayton criticized her for speaking so boldly in the men's domain, while Bartley laughed that she'd put on quite a show. The three men's distinct approaches crystallized during a crisis in early June. A flash flood washed out the bridge connecting Pine Creek to the main supply route. With food stores dwindling, the town faced difficult decisions. At the emergency meeting, Clayton immediately proposed sending riders to his connections in Helena for assistance, at significant cost to the town treasury. Bartley suggested a gambling tournament to raise funds, brushing aside concerns about struggling families losing what little they had. When Gabriella suggested pooling resources and organizing a community garden on the school grounds, Clayton smiled indulgently before continuing as if she hadn't spoken. Bartley winked and whispered, "Leave the serious matters to the men, darling." Samuel, however, built upon her idea. "Miss Pierce's suggestion has merit. While we wait for the bridge repairs, local food production could supplement our supplies. I've seen similar approaches work in drought-stricken areas of Texas." By meeting's end, Gabriella's expanded plan had been adopted, with Sam volunteering his expertise to help implement it. As they walked together afterward, planning the garden layout, Gabriella felt a dangerous warmth spreading through her carefully constructed defenses. "You were the only one who actually heard me tonight," she said quietly. Sam stopped walking, his expression serious in the fading light. "I always hear you, Gabriella. Your thoughts matter to the town and to me." Before she could respond, hoofbeats interrupted them. Bartley rode up, looking uncharacteristically grave. "Trouble at the South Pass," he announced. "Indian raid on the Carter homestead. They're calling for volunteers to pursue." The peaceful moment shattered as the three men joined the hastily formed posse. Watching them ride into potential danger, Gabriella confronted the unwelcome realization that her heart had developed preferences despite her rational intentions. The supposed Indian raid proved to be something entirely different. When the posse returned 3 days later, Samuel rode directly to the schoolhouse, his expression grim beneath his dust-covered face. "It wasn't Blackfoot or Crow," he explained as Gabriella tended a gash on his arm. "It was Walsh's men, dressed to look like Indians. They've been trying to drive out smaller homesteaders to expand his range." Gabriella's hands froze. Clayton, but why would he join the posse then? To control the narrative, keep suspicion away from himself. Sam winced as she continued cleaning his wound. Bartley knew too. That's why he was so eager to spread the news, their partners in this land scheme. The revelation struck Gabriella like physical pain. She'd allowed both men into her life, even momentarily considered their courtship, while they'd been terrorizing innocent families. "How did you discover this?" Tracked differently than the others, found distinctive horseshoe marks matching Walsh's specialty shoes from back east. His eyes held hers. "I confronted them when we made camp." "That's how I got this," he nodded toward his injured arm. "We need to tell Sheriff Miller immediately," Gabriella said, wrapping a clean bandage around his arm. "Already tried." "Miller's been taking payments from both of them for months." Sam's voice hardened. "They left me for dead in a ravine. Wouldn't have made it back if the Carter boy hadn't found me." Gabriella's world tilted. The frontier's harshness had never felt more real, not just in its natural dangers but in the corruption of men who valued power over humanity. "What will you do?" she asked, suddenly fearful for him. Territorial Marshal is due next week. I've documented everything. His hand covered hers where it rested on the bandage. But they'll know I survived by now. They'll come looking to silence me. The schoolhouse door opened, revealing Clayton Walsh's tall figure. His handsome face arranged itself into a concerned expression that now seemed hideously false. "Miss Pierce, I heard Sam returned injured. I came to offer assistance." His eyes flicked to their joined hands, then narrowed slightly. Gabriella made an instantaneous decision, squeezing Sam's hand before letting go and smiling brightly at Clayton. "Mr. Walsh, how thoughtful. Samuel was just telling me about the terrible misunderstanding at the Carter place." She moved toward Clayton, deliberately positioning herself between the two men. "He's quite exhausted. Perhaps you could help me prepare some food while he rests." Clayton's suspicion visibly eased as she led him toward the small kitchen attached to her living quarters. The game had begun, a dangerous charade where her performance could mean life or death for the man whose integrity had revealed the truth. The next week unfolded in a precarious balance of deception and preparation. Gabriella maintained a careful facade of normalcy, accepting Clayton's renewed courtship attempts with feigned interest while secretly working with Samuel to document the land-grabbing scheme. Using her position as teacher, she sent coded messages to homesteaders through their children, warning them and gathering testimonies. Bartley Jenkins increased his visits too, his charm taking on a threatening edge as he probed for information about Sam's activities. Both men now openly competed for her attention, seemingly viewing her as a prize in their larger contest for regional control. 3 suitors for the schoolmarm, the town gossips whispered. "Who will win the educated beauty's hand?" Gabriella played the role of flattered object of affection while meeting Samuel in secret, their feelings deepening even as danger mounted. During one clandestine meeting in the church bell tower, Sam confessed fears that went beyond their immediate peril. "Even if the marshal believes us, these men have connections. They might escape justice." He looked out over the town they both had come to love. "And I have nothing to offer you compared to Walsh's wealth. I'm just a cowhand with some saved wages and dreams of my own small ranch someday." Gabriella's hand found his face, turning it toward her. "You offer me respect that can't be purchased. You see me, all of me, not just parts you find convenient or decorative." Their first kiss, exchanged in the shadow of the church bell, felt like both a beginning and a culmination, the natural result of minds connecting before bodies did. The fantasy of escape tempted them both. They could flee before the marshal arrived, start fresh elsewhere, but neither could abandon the community that had embraced them, nor the families threatened by Walsh and Jenkins' scheme. The mounting tension broke dramatically during Pine Creek's Founders' Day celebration. The entire town gathered in the central square for music, food, and speeches. Clayton Walsh, resplendent in an expensive new suit, took advantage of the occasion to make his move. "Citizens of Pine Creek," he announced, commanding attention as he pulled Gabriella to the center of the gathering. "Today celebrates new beginnings. In that spirit, I ask for Miss Gabriella Pierce's hand in marriage." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gabriella froze, aware of Samuel's pained expression from across the square and Bartley Jenkins' thunderous scowl. The charade had reached its breaking point. "Mr. Walsh," she began, voice stronger than she expected, "your proposal is—" Gunfire interrupted her response. Chaos erupted as territorial marshals stormed the square, badges gleaming in the summer sun. "Clayton Walsh, Bartley Jenkins, you're under arrest for fraud, intimidation, and attempted murder." In the confusion that followed, Clayton grabbed Gabriella, pressing a revolver to her ribs beneath his coat. "Walk calmly to the horses," he hissed, his charming mask completely dissolved. "You're my passage out of here." Terror gripped her as he forced her toward the hitching posts. Samuel appeared in their path, seemingly unarmed. "Let her go, Walsh." "It's over." Clayton laughed, the sound unnervingly hollow. "Step aside, cowboy. The schoolmarm and I are leaving. She's always been my ticket to respectability in this territory." "She's not a ticket." "She's not a prize." Samuel's voice remained steady. "She's the finest mind in this county, and you never once valued it." Gabriella felt Clayton's grip tighten painfully. Her mind, I don't give a damn about her opinions. It's her connections to the territorial governor through her uncle that I need. The revelation of Clayton's true motives, so coldly calculating, gave Gabriella the courage for action. She stomped hard on his instep while driving her elbow into his ribs, just as Samuel had taught her during their secret meetings. The momentary distraction was enough. Samuel launched forward, tackling Clayton as marshals converged from all directions. The revolver discharged, the bullet grazing Samuel's shoulder before burying itself in the dirt. Moments later, both Clayton and the newly captured Bartley were in custody, their scheme exposed through the evidence Samuel and Gabriella had meticulously gathered. As a marshal attended to Sam's wound, Gabriella knelt beside him, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. "You could have been killed," she whispered. "Some things are worth risking everything for." His eyes held hers. "Not just justice, you." In that moment of shared danger and triumph, the false belief that had governed Gabriella's life, that her mind and her heart must remain separate frontiers, collapsed entirely. Autumn painted the mountains in fiery splendor as Gabriella stood on the porch of the newly constructed schoolhouse, watching children play in the yard. The town had rebuilt stronger after the Walsh and Jenkins conspiracy unraveled, with many of the cheated homesteaders reclaiming their land. Contemplating how to teach fractions to reluctant young minds, Samuel's voice came from behind her. Now appointed as the region's deputy marshal, he'd proven himself not just brave but diplomatically skilled in helping heal community divisions. "Actually," she replied, turning to face the man who'd become central to her life, "I was contemplating how thoroughly wrong I was about the frontier." He raised an eyebrow, coming to stand beside her. "How so?" "I believed that out here a woman had to choose between being respected for her mind or being loved for her heart, that pursuing knowledge meant surrendering connection." She smiled up at him. "You disproved that theory rather conclusively." Sam took her hand, his thumb brushing over the simple gold band he'd placed there 2 weeks earlier in a ceremony attended by the entire community. "The frontier needs minds and hearts working together," he said, "just like marriages do." Their small home stood visible in the distance, built on land granted to Samuel for his service in exposing the conspiracy. The modest ranch was already taking shape with a small herd, crops, and the library room he'd insisted on building first. "Mrs. Yates," he said, the name still new and wonderful to her ears, "shall we go home? I picked up that astronomy journal you wanted in Helena." As they walked hand in hand toward their future, Gabriella reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 3 men had sought her hand, each representing different aspects of frontier power, wealth, charm, and integrity. In choosing the one who respected her mind, she'd found someone who cherished all of her. The setting sun cast long shadows across their path as they reached their homestead. Inside, oil lamps glowed warmly through windows and books lined shelves built by Samuel's hands. On the writing desk sat both their journals, hers filled with scientific observations and teaching notes, his with careful ranch accounts and poetry. That night, as they lay together planning improvements to both the school curriculum and their budding ranch, Gabriella knew with absolute certainty that she had found the rarest frontier treasure. A partnership where both her mind and heart could flourish in the same rich soil.